my gosh, you guys are not squirrels. I can actually talk to you. So,
right?
This is weird. Now we're going to get cocky.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to. Welcome to Explain Yourself Kickstarter Roundtable for October 22nd, 2021. That excitement is literally me not being frozen. I want to thank everybody for joining us. First, co-host Will Allred. Will, how are you, buddy?
Doing all right. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You sound appley. You sound fresh.
And very appley. Yes, I'm using my wife's iMac, so I'm not using my lowly PC. It's I'm definitely upgrading at this point, but don't tell her that, right?
I don't want to say. I mean, you're very crisp. I like. All right. So, but this show is about the four creators who have joined us. Laurent, I'm going to ask you to start. We do a little 30-second elevator pitch. So if you were at a comic convention, how would you get somebody's attention about sacrifice? Once we go through all four, we're going to dive deep on each project on its own. So what is sacrifice?
All right. So if I was throwing a quick pitch, it would be Hellboy meets Evil Dead. A man whose soul was tied to Lucifer uses his demonic powers to fight evil, while also look for allies who can kill Lucifer on the day he's summoned, while also trying to make enough money to keep the lights on. It's a horror comedy series.
Very nice. Colin, by the time we get to Dallas, how would you get our attention at a comic convention?
So this is a story of a flawed medical student learning to become a doctor during an offbeat apocalypse. If you like gritty medical drama of shows like ER and apocalyptic existential dread of comics like Walking Dead and Why the Last Man, then you might like By the Time I Get to Dallas.
All right, I'm going clockwise. Boss, is it Besserat? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
That's correct, Besserat. There you go.
All right. What can you tell us about Zoofan? How would you get our attention at a comic convention about your project?
By the way, Colin and Lauren, that was amazing. That was wow.
Hey man, it's good to finally meet you too. We've been
I know. It's so
we've been like texting buddies forever and never actually spoken to you. It's kind of awesome.
So Zoofan is a sci-fi series that recounts the true story of Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in the 1800s. It's a Pan-African resistance story about unity. That's how I frame it.
I cannot wait to delve into that. It's like speculative historical fiction. I've never heard of that, and I love the idea. So we're gonna get in deep. All right, Carla, what can you tell us about Duplicant if I was walking past your table at a convention?
So Duplicant is set in the future during a pandemic of organ failure. And in this world, when your organs fail, instead of getting an organ from a donor, which is illegal in this world, you get a 3D printed organ that's an exact match for what you need. But the catch is that they're too expensive for you to afford. And since you don't have a choice in it, you're sold off into indentured servitude and forced to do work you never would have done before. And on top of it, the scientist who created these, he's already upset with the way his tech is being used. And then he hears that there's some fatal flaw that might have happened, some sort of, sorry, my brain is slow. I've been out from like 9 until 10:30 tonight. So I got in like right before you guys started. He basically hears these rumors that there's some fatal flaw and he thinks it's all bunk until one of the duplicants dies in his arms. And that sends him on a journey to figure out what, if anything, nefarious has been going on with his tech that he isn't aware of.
No, I got a chance to read the first 2 issues. I didn't get to 3 and 4, unfortunately. My day didn't go the day I wanted to, and I really wanted to read it because I was completely captivated by 3 and 4. We're going to give you a second to get your mind into it. And, so, Besserat, I would love to get into the historical story of the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. Can you bring us into why this is important to you? Because I think many people watching your story might be new to them.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would love to answer that. So I was born and raised in Ethiopia, and I came to the States around 2004. I still go back and forth a lot. I have a lot of family there, and this part of our history is widely celebrated. It's really like it kind of makes up part of the Ethiopian identity. This specific moment in history in the 1800s, and that's because Ethiopia was the only nation in Africa that was not colonized by European forces during the scramble for Africa. So it's a huge celebration, a big moment of empowerment for both Ethiopians and just Africans in general. It kind of tipped the balance during that era for ending the colonial cycle. Like a lot of resistance movements kind of born out of that in Africa and outside of Africa. But what I learned is that not a lot of people know about this moment of history in the States. I mean, we know about it so much there. There's an annual celebration of it. A lot of people, in different African countries know about this, but not a lot of people know about it outside of that. And I wanted to share this heritage of ours because most often when you hear stories about Africa and Black people in general, it's usually kind of focused on the pain and suffering of Black people, and not about their resistance, the honor, the courage. Stories like Gladiator and Troy. Like you don't see these kind of stories about African history and heritage, and so I've been really wanting to tell this story for a while. And I mean, it's just an amazing history. There's so many twists. It's like Game of Thrones. The actual history was like almost like Game of Thrones without the sci-fi and without the fictional element, of course. But so many twists, so many heartbreaking moments, remarkable moments, and I want to shed that light on the people that I grew up with and the African heritage.
I'm going to pull up your Kickstarter page so we can look at some of the art. We've had recently two almost documentary comics, The Crescent City Hotel and Durati, which is a story of a Spanish anarchist. And it was really interesting to hear those creators talk about like the history and how that became the comic. So my real question when I looked at this is, all right, so this history and you could have just done a documentary history of it. Where did the idea to say, no, I'm also going to, stir it in a pot of superhero comics as well? How did you adapt to that while I pull up the campaign?
Yeah, so the reason I did that is because two reasons. One is as I told you, a lot of Ethiopians already know this story very well. Okay, the one thing that they may not know as much of is the nuances of the story. So a lot of people recognize the famous figures, the emperors, the warriors from that time, the kind of the battle strategies of the events that happened, but most people don't know the relatable day-to-day truths of that story. Like, how did people feel being in that moment? What were the moments of doubt? Like saying, "Hey, like we're about to be invaded. Am I really going for this? Like, or am I not? Like, am I just gonna save my family?" Like these moments, like that. Those are the moments that Ethiopians may not like recognize as much, but the general broader history, the strategies, the facts, a lot of them know it. So I needed a way to show those nuances of the story in a new way, and I didn't want to do it through the documentary piece, because what would usually happen is people get carried away with the accuracy, the like to the like minute detail of the historical element, and they'd also get carried away by famous figures. So like the emperor is not depicted in one way or another, they would be like, "Oh my God, I'm not reading this book because you didn't show that this warrior came at this time," and so on and so forth. So I wanted to leave room for that. And the other element was, this event, as I told you, was more than an event for Ethiopian history. It was for African history. It was for Black history. And so I wanted to really expand the story out to be a Pan-African story. So what happens in that era is, before Italy was even, introduced to hold the whole thing, Ethiopia had different provincial leaders who continued to have conflicts with each other for ruling Ethiopia. And so those challenges, they had different backgrounds, right? There were different languages that they spoke. They were like conflicting values that they had. And all of them were like in this land where they were trying to just fight for, okay, my way or the highway, right? And so I wanted to express this difference of background and values and the conflicting interests in a broader African way. And so I said, you know what, let me make this a Pan-African story where I have a Nigerian leader, I have a Kenyan leader, I have a Ghanaian leader, I have an Ethiopian leader. You can distinctly know that these people's backgrounds, their language is different, their history is different, but they're like asked to be in this fragile alliance, right? Which is what Ethiopia was. It was literally a nation kind of going between collapse at that time. There's an emperor, but these leaders are still fighting over, who's going to lead. And so I wanted to express that, and then I wanted to make, of course, sci-fi is something I've always loved and really wanted to make it epic and all that stuff. And those were the main kind of reasons that made me fictionalize the story. It gave me more room to be flexible as a writer, right? And also to focus on those day-to-day truths of that story.
Quick question for you. So you're the writer on it.
Yeah.
What's the rest of your team? Who's on the rest of the team?
So the rest of the team, we have Stanley Obinde on the art. He's from Nigeria. He is literally based in Lagos, Nigeria. On the colors, we have Toyin Ajitun-Mobi. He's also based in Lagos, Nigeria. Stan is also the letterer for this story. And these two guys, I've been working with them. This is our third series. We have a superhero series called Jember, and then we have a fantasy series called Howie that we've already published. So this is our new series, Zoofans, is a sci-fi story. And then we have one more team member. He's also a line artist. His name is Kelechi, and his last name is really tough. I don't want to butcher it, but I'll happily type it.
Fair. If you don't get on us for mispronouncing anything, we won't get on you.
That's why I was like, it's good. Best around is good. And so, so those are the team members that I work with. Really exceptional artists, as you can see on the Kickstarter page.
It's very clean.
We also have Rita Faye on the cover, which is an amazing find. She's a phenomenal artist. And just did it so well. So I'm so thankful to have her on board as well. That cover that you saw, there you go. You're pulling it up. It's a homage cover for Emperor Menelik. That's his real photograph of the emperor of the time, who was able to unite the different leaders to defend Ethiopia and preserve the sovereignty of the nation. And so that's that homage shot right there. You have that floating panel, stairs, and the lion, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I read that on the Kickstarter page, and I had to go back and make sure that the big cat was on the ground. I was like, oh, it really was. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
No, the artwork is very smooth, and the aliens are extremely. I like that they feel like maybe they could have all come from the same part of the galaxy, but also maybe not. Do you have a hand in this, or is this all the artist developing the alien races?
So I have more of a hand in the. So what I do whenever we design characters, whether it's protagonist, antagonist characters, is I first for me, I first try to define, okay, what is the personality of this character? What do they like? What do they not like? And all that stuff. And then I start to collect, like I almost make like a board of like, I find an actor who I think is like, oh, this actor would do well in this, with this character. And then let me like try to compose some Ethiopian designs, some Kenyan designs here and there. I try to map it out in my head, see the picture, and then do a little bit of like sketches. I'm not that good. I'm just this is all color coordination and all that stuff. And then I pass that on, and then the artists are like, I would give them the full credit, to be honest, because I mean, putting pictures together and color codes and all that is cool, but the way they just elevate it to like something else is like, that's them. That's that visual piece that they.
We do have one question in the chat from Chuck Pino. Don't you also have an editor on that book?
It's really.
I think you're being called out, man. I think you're being called out.
So Chuck, we actually have two editors. We have an editor, Bezawi Tacho, and Chuck as well. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here, Chuck. Chuck has just helped us edit. He gave me such great pointers to make the story feel a bit more complete. And so
it feels like Chuck is editing every other book on Kickstarter for the rest of 2021. So, we can just assume that he's part of it unless we don't bring up unless we say Chuck did not edit it, we'll just assume it. We also, Kevin P. West topped in. It is great to have you back, Kevin. Any question about any of the campaigns, please feel free. Now, we are going to come back to it. I think that let's stay in the sci-fi, Carla. Let's move to Duplicant and do a little deeper dive on this. Now, I want to say that I was very impressed with it. It's dark. Did you? One thing I want to ask, because you're talking about a liver failure pandemic worldwide, was this in play before COVID-19, or is this a reaction to it?
No, it was actually, that's been part of the really kind of freaky thing is I had written this as a pilot script, I want to say in like 2013, 2014, and then I adapted it into a comic around 2015, I want to say. So the first two issues were already like done and in the can, and I had the page by page breakdowns done for the first 5 issues before I even did my first Kickstarter. And I did my first Kickstarter in January, February of 2020. So, like right when I ended my first Kickstarter was when basically everything went to hell. And it would, and then I ended up signing with a publisher. So then it wasn't just like having this Kickstarter. I was running about an organ failure pandemic during a pandemic that ends up affecting your organs. It was also being published in comic book stores at the same time. And I eerily have gotten a lot of things correct about what happens in our pandemic as opposed to my fictional future pandemic.
I can say with complete honesty, I wish you were more wrong. Because I did read things and it mirrors things, a lot of things, and I was just like, oh, this is it's you're kind of uncomfortable reading it in a good way.
And I've been like Simpsons levels of accuracy.
Yeah.
The what?
I was like, is it like Simpsons levels of like how you're this accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And what I think actually helped me get some of this stuff correct was I grew up when the AIDS epidemic hit. And so that was a huge influence on me with this book, was growing up as a child with that and with people, acting like anyone who might have AIDS, like they were toxic. And so I kind of carried that into this. I grew up with like Ryan White as the child who got it, I believe, from a blood transfusion. Like that was a big part of my childhood. And, like people, like just that whole mentality of like, don't be afraid of people, because that's like the worst thing you can do when someone's sick is to be afraid of them and to treat them basically the way we treat a lot of people right now.
I bet you're on all the awesome watch lists now, you know.
I probably am. I probably don't even know it, and I am.
Yeah, and I mean, just the indentured servitude part of this story, it feels too right on the nose about how people would take advantage of this situation. Where did that idea come from in the genesis of the story?
It came from two different places. So the first place that it initially came from was watching Repo, the Genetic Opera, which has a similar storyline in that when you get an organ, if you don't pay your debt, they literally come and take the organ out of you. Like they kill you basically to repossess this organ. Now, I did not go that road with this, but the other thing that was an influence was, you know, I think there's a somewhat similar system in place when it comes to medical debt these days, because if you don't have health insurance, and unfortunately, even if you do have health insurance and you have some big, horrible medical thing that you have to take care of, you're thrown into all this debt, and then suddenly you're stuck having to work probably a job you don't really want to do just to keep your head above water. And, you know, I think we're seeing a lot of people kind of revolting against having to do jobs they don't want to do anymore, that aren't paying them what they should be getting paid for the time and effort and basically the crap that they're getting for having to do these low paying jobs. I mean, we're seeing it now. For me, like it's very, it's something that I dealt with myself when I worked in film and TV. We're seeing it with the potential strike from IATSE for the conditions that they're having to work in. And there's a lot of stuff that, like, you know, I had kind of buried that I didn't remember that I had dealt with myself when I worked in film and TV, because you're not paid very well when you're below the line, especially when you're not union, and you're working at least 60 hours a week. So you're getting, I remember feeling I was lucky if I was getting like 4 hours of sleep at night. And there was a couple times, like there are people who've talked about falling asleep behind the wheel. And I was one of those people. I was like the person driving cast. And I remember this one guy sitting next to me who was one of the cast members, and he looked terrified because I think I fell asleep behind the wheel when I was driving them. It's just not good when you're forcing people to work beyond the point of exhaustion and you're not even paying them enough to keep the roof over their head.
Yeah. I remember a story about Pixar when they were working 20-hour days to get, I think, Toy Story 2 ready. And a guy drove to work with his 4 or 5 month old in his car, and went in and the child ended up fine, but was left in the car for hours, and then they had to take the child to the hospital. And now the good thing is that Pixar went, okay, we're working everybody too hard. We can't have that, and changed. But I mean, how many companies?
Well, the fact that it had to wait for that, like, why? Yeah. It should have clicked as soon as you're like, well, I'm having someone work 20 hours. Like, that's not enough time for someone to go home, eat, go to sleep, get up, get ready for work.
Yeah, it isn't brain surgery, but people want you to believe it is. Now, Blake from Blake's Buzz says you can see the future. I mean, I'm fine with nanobots. I don't want to hear the hum if what I read in.
No, you don't want to hear the hum.
Okay, so Ignatius says, I'm from Argentina, and I have to say it's still crazy to me that you don't have public health care in the United States. Yeah, we really appreciate our freedom to die, and die in debt. And,
you almost spit on the computer, didn't you?
Oh, I was joking.
We actually have an ER doctor in here with us, so we're not gonna put you on the spot with that. We want to tell you about comics and not mess with.
Don't come to me for answers. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's one of the people that heals you. He's not part of the billing process, so we're gonna just say that.
I couldn't tell you how all that works. The beauty of emergency medicine is you just take care of whoever comes in the door. That's why I went into it, because I don't understand the system at all. It's FUBAR.
Byzantine by design.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm navigating it right now with my grandfather. It's one of the reasons I'm so tired is I've been having to drive to Virginia and back from Pennsylvania because he fell and broke his leg and needed to go to the hospital and then got transferred to rehab. And then, so like dealing with that whole system, trying to get him his veterans benefits activated, which is like a whole crazy system to get that activated. And then assisted living. It's like he's one of those people that would fall through the cracks if I wasn't chasing everything because he's not bad enough to need nursing home care, which is covered by insurance, but he is bad enough where he shouldn't be by himself. And so we're trying to cobble together paying for assisted living, which is why I'm getting his veterans benefits activated because that'll go towards that. But it's a nightmare. It's just a total nightmare.
Ignatia, if you want to hear something really bad, delve into America's problem with the VA. That'll keep you up for a full week.
Yeah.
So,
I laugh
Carla,
because it's a mess.
Who are the rest of the people on your team?
Okay, so I should first mention my editor.
Is it Chuck? No, it's not Chuck.
Just so we
No,
know
it's
if it
not
is
Chuck.
or isn't Chuck.
So I had an editor on the first issue, Vince Hernandez, and he's actually running a Kickstarter right now, Syria Underworld Pimp Hustler, which I think has like raised some crazy amount of money so far, and it's only in the first couple of days. It's up to like 30,000 or something like that.
Wow.
So he was the editor on the first issue, and then because I had such a large gap between 1 and 2, he just didn't have the time to continue with it. And I didn't bring an editor in again until issue 5 because I just found myself kind of drowning in the creative process for a number of reasons. And so I brought in Beth Scorzato to work on issue 5 as my editor. And then Mariana Strakowska is my artist. She's based in Poland and she does everything, the line work and the colors. And she's been with me from the beginning. And then Layla Del Duca and Owen Gianni do my covers. Layla's sort of been blowing up a lot lately because she's done Wonder Woman. She has a bunch of her own projects she's done. So she does the line work and then Owen does the colors. And then I've had 2 different letter artists. So Josh Reed did book 1 and then he got hired at DC and they don't let you do outside projects. So he helped me find Carlos, who's been with me since issue 2. And Carlos is huge. Like he does a gazillion books. He works on my friend David Pepos's books. Like he does everything. He's constantly posting new stuff that he's working on.
And explain yourself, alumni. David was on talking about the OZ. So he's a great writer. So
he's a great writer. Yeah.
He gave us a master class on pitching too. I'm just like, why can't I be that good? Huh? Can somebody show me how to do that?
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. And he's a great salesman too at the comic conventions. He's awesome. He's actually I believe he's at Baltimore Comic-Con this weekend, which if it wasn't for my son's birthday on Sunday, I absolutely would have gone to that convention. But I'm like, no. I got Elsa coming to sing to my kid on Sunday. I got to be here for that.
You can't miss that.
Can't miss that.
Oh, that's awesome. So no, Duplicate, very, very dark. It's not afraid to get into some pretty uncomfortable situations, but I was very compelled with the story as issues 1 and 2 only. But I'm ready.
Awesome.
So working out. So Blake says the most important thing. We're all great writers. We love the positivity, and we're here for it.
Yeah, Blake's awesome. He does reviews of comics. That's how I met him, and he also has his own podcast too.
Yeah. So I just did he mentioned something on Twitter. We're gonna try to sneak Blake on here one of these nights so that he can explain himself how you become a podcaster and a reviewer. Well, we introduced our ER doctor, so why don't we segue to by the time we get to Dallas, and how does your own I can take a guess, but I'd rather hear it in your words. How does your own experience in the medical field inspire this book as I pull it up?
It kind of was the other way around. I had the idea for the migration piece of this story, which is kind of like the speculative fiction part of it, which is what would happen if 80% of the human population all started just traveling to one part on the globe. I just woke up with that idea in the middle of the night in like 2011. And I had no idea what to do with it, but I just got up in the middle of the night and wrote it down. And it was only a couple of years later, I found out that, I'd been working maybe 5 years as an ER doc, and I found out my hospital had a sabbatical program where you could take some time off to, for some protected time to do something, who knows what. I think they wanted you to do something other than write comic books is my guess, but nobody stopped me.
It wasn't explicitly said.
It wasn't in
Suckers.
the writer, right? Exactly. I'm not going to go learn anything. Research. So I just sat in my basement for a month and just tried to live the writer's life, and just tried to break out this story as a comic book. And it didn't have a plot. It only had this, this basic sort of conceit. And it took a while to realize, oh, well, someone has to be in this world and be moving through it and have a reason why, because that's actually what writing is. This was all new to me. I'd never really written fiction. And I realized, oh, he could be a medical student. That's the actual story. It's him becoming a doctor. It's my story. It's sort of my, love letter to becoming a doctor, but I'm putting it in this kind of offbeat apocalypse. And, I'd done this whole sabbatical to kind of get away from medicine, to kind of get to do something different. And then I realized, damn it, you got to write what you actually know about. And that'll be kind of fun. So the protagonist is a very flawed medical student who's trying to feel his way and learn what, it really takes to be a doctor. So it's his journey. There will be some medical set pieces in each issue, but that's the real story. That's his quest, the Joseph Campbell thing. But it happens to be happening in this kind of sort of zombie-like thing, but, it's kind of a slow roll apocalypse.
So you're telling me that you wrote a comic better than anything I've written on a whim, just in 4 weeks?
No, I'm
because you had a vacation.
That was 2000.
All right, guys. That's all we have for Colin. Really, thank you so much for stopping by.
Connection's getting very fuzzy here, it seems. I wouldn't say that at all, Kevin. Your shit is awesome. But that was only nice. 8 years ago. It's taken a little time to get it rolling.
What I remember from reading issue 1 was the conceit built this tension to the story for me that played so well with the book that every page I was waiting for, and you've got the people moving, and we were joking before the show about our to read pile. Issue 2 is still in my to read pile, so I'm still behind on issue 2, but the conceit does so much for the story. It was like a horror movie. I was waiting for the big thing, and when it didn't happen, it just heightened the tension more. And was the tension something that I just was it something you were going for, or did it
definitely was, especially book 1, because nothing happens. I'm laying out his life, putting a lot of investment in his character, because that's really the point, is he's got to start from a really just barely redeemable and have a big place to travel to. And so you see him at work, at home, at play. But you have to know that there's something going on in the background. And I was hoping that was getting at it without having, I didn't want to do like a pan all over the world and, use news reports and a lot of the kind of techniques you might have to kind of introduce what's going on in the world. I wanted it to be just him and only what he knows for the most part. I ended up doing it a little bit in flashback the first few pages just to kind of pull the slingshot back. But I was hoping that that's what would happen, because there are actual bad guys that he will confront and have to deal with later on in this story. But the first 2 issues plus, we don't see him. The bad guy is the story itself, is that conceit. So it's got to kind of be brooding and pull you along. But that first book was heavy lifting because you had to kind of get there.
It worked. It worked for me.
Cool.
What is where did you find your team, and who are they? We'd want to make sure and shout out everybody.
Yeah,
we forgot
no,
to 2 weeks ago, and Will and I talked about it. We're like, oh my God, we're going to talk about the colorists and the letterers. Without them, there's no comic.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the very beginning, I've been working with Juanfran Moyano, and he was my penciler, and his brother Jay Moyano is the colorist. And I just completely got lucky. I'd had this story. I'd done page breakdowns through the whole story to completion, and I had like a first draft of the first book, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to make a comic. And I started just like lurking on a couple Reddit boards, which is a tough place to lurk. Comic collabs, I think, comic collaborations. I forget the subreddit, but and put out my pitch and got savaged. But like in a good way. Actually, people were awesome. Like I learned a lot, and like I realized like I'm either going to be a zombie story or I really have to not be a zombie story. And it was kind of like trying to be both. But in there, like I saw him, Juanfran post that, you know, he's a penciler that was between stories and his stuff looked great. And I pitched it to him, and, you know, he took my character sketch, my character sort of profiles. And like when they came back, I was like, oh my God, like he really gets it. And his acting, like the way he gets the characters as actors, especially with his pencils, are just like he just nails it. We've never spoken. I think he translates, I think, everything through Google Translate, but he's an incredibly sensitive reader. And so he's been with me from the very beginning and has helped me learn a ton, because I'm sure I was a pain in the ass to work with. And then luckily he brought like all these other people with him. So he brought his brother, who's an awesome colorist and who's terrific. And he brought Dario Fasmarin who's a fantastic inker. And the three of them had worked together on a few different things. So I've been lucky enough to keep those guys the entire time. And then James Reed is my penciler. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about, I have a second book that runs in parallel with the first one called the Trinity Project, which is what happens when I have too many ideas and someone lets me do them. But it's kind of a prequel story that the two stories are going to kind of meet as we get to the fourth and fifth chapters. And for that book, I have Greg Woronchak in Montreal, who's my line artist, and Jason Feinstone, who's been my best friend since college, happens to have kind of picked up coloring in like the past few years, and he's really good. So he does one of my books, which is really crazy.
That's awesome.
So pretty cool team. And I
have to ask
editor. I should mention an editor. It's not Chuck. I did use.
We're actually going to have to credit our books as not Chuck Pino now.
He does have a blurb on the back, if I'm not correct.
Okay. You got to get his name on the book one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I Matt Idleson, who was a pretty big dude at I guess DC and Marvel, and now is at I think Dynamite. So he was kind of in between gigs, and I managed to hire him as kind of like script development. I haven't used anybody like for each book, but I probably should start. So Chuck, I'll look you up.
I got a question, Lauren. I have to ask you, because I've got a question for the whole panel. But your artist, where is your artist based from? Sacrifice.
So my main artist is based in Taiwan.
Okay, all right. So my main artist is in France. Will's main artist is in Spain?
Argentina.
I'm sorry.
Well, and then Alice will for 3 and 4. She's in France as well.
France. Okay, we've got Poland. We have which African country, so that I don't Nigeria. Thank you. Okay.
Pretty awesome.
It's amazing that, you know, we're all talking. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation in real life without the technology. But tell me your experiences. Best experiences, maybe mistranslations that you've dealt with, of working with an artist in completely different countries, sometimes different language, sometimes always different time zones. I've got a couple, but I'd love to hear yours.
I had one where I'm trying to remember what the scene was. All right, it's in the preview, so it's not even a spoiler. There's a scene where two characters are arguing over like who's going to do a job. The main character's like, okay, we'll sell it the usual way. So we're drawing straws. That's how we're figuring it out. And I wrote that in the script, and I just kind of like explained something to him. And he was like, "What the hell is that?" And I showed pictures. He was like, "Oh, well, this is what I was going to draw in here." And I saw that. I was like, "What the hell is that?" Like it was the same thing but different country. Like they have like a can, and they have I don't know. So like there's a lot of times where it's like, okay, I know what I'm looking at, but I need you to tell me what I'm looking at. Like so that's happened back and forth a few times, and we worked together through it, but there's been a few funny moments with that.
Well, this pretty much goes out to everybody. I mean, do you find yourself, because I know when I'm writing for Pablo, who is getting everything translated, I really try to go as basic as possible on the script, and not use any weird idioms, like I would normally use because, I'm a crazy American. But, if I try to make it as simple as possible so that hopefully it translates really well. And is that something that you all think about at all? Or
my scripts end up really long for Juan Fran because I want to explain the jokes and explain the idioms. So and I just talk too much anyway. So my stuff's very much starts in Boston. Like there's Boston jokes, there's baseball jokes, there's I made this dumb joke about Bucky Dent and a pirate because they're stealing a boat and they're stealing a boat from the owner of the Red Sox. So it's this really complicated, and Rudy is a Yankees fan, our protagonist. So it's this really complicated joke that I'm doing this joke. I don't care. And I have to explain this to Juan Fran. And it's a page and a half of this is Bucky Dent. This is who the Red Sox are. This is Yankees. This is baseball. This is what a baseball hat looks like. This is who the owner of the Red Sox is. And I'm this guy's going to fire me. So I'll have just these digressions, but I just feel I have to have explained it once. But the cool thing is he's really into Google Earth. So he will find where my story is, and he'll find stuff that I didn't mention and put stuff in. I'm wait a second, that's a block from my house. I know where that is. And he's tracked it out all on Google Earth and is putting it in the book, which I just love. So you get surprised sometimes.
That's really neat. I find we have problems when I get lazy and I use I just kind of use a shorthand because I feel this is just this will work. That's when we mess up. We had a story in the 36 Olympic Games. We wanted to show. I feel if you have time travel, you either need to kill Hitler or explain why you don't kill Hitler, right? I mean, you just have to one or the other. So we had a thing where the girls had to dress up in the Hugo Boss, SS garb, and Tart throws the armband, but I was there's no way I'm going to have her wear a swastika. I just wasn't going to do that. So I told Ludo in the script, it's instead of the swastika, it's, they're flipping the bird. So I figured if you had 4 flipping the birds from far away, it would do it. And I get the art back and it's 4 doves of peace.
You got to keep it.
And it's so beautiful. I mean, it is. Instead of my kind of, probably boring trying to be punk rock, Ludo draws this beautiful, peaceful protest. And I was well, it's so much better. This mistake is, I didn't know if it was a mistake. I didn't know if he changed it on purpose. And I did email him. I said, this is perfect. It's great. Don't change it. But did you mean to do this? He goes, no, I just didn't understand what you were talking about. I thought you wanted words. So, I mean, translation problems can make your book a lot better too.
My goodness. Your comic is even titled Tart, which is, do you know the England?
Yeah.
You do know.
Yeah.
gonna go there, but that. Wow.
Yeah, I know how harsh the term tart is in England now. I was completely ignorant of just what the connotation in England was until I used to deal cards at a casino, and this really wonderful British dealer, David, was asking me about my comic book and what it was, and I said it was tart, and he went, he just breathed into his top teeth, and he stepped away from me. And I was like, what do you know? So, yeah, I know now. So
that's hilarious. Yeah. So as far as like, for me, by the way, Will, I do appreciate the fact that you like make the language basic, because I'm sure if I was working with you, I would have appreciated that. Like, I remember when I first came, there was a lot of slangs I had a difficulty with, like even just normal terms like hot dog, were like what are we people doing here? Like what? Like I really like. There's many things that that I had to learn and catch up on, and so one of the things that I do, I don't usually like make it basic for my artists, and one of the reasons I chose Nigerian artists is because my first preference was actually to go with like artists from back home, but the comic book scene there isn't as like it's just emerging right now. It's not as like awesome as here, and so the Nigerian scene though is really thriving, and so I found some really cool artists there, and the thing they do that we've done many times is like as Kevin said, I would write like shorter versions of some sentences like ain't or like things like that, and when Stan like letters it or even when he's like writing it, he's always changing it to like he always is like is not, or like he just make sure he what is it like separates the words out, and so sometimes the emphasis of the delivery is gone, the joke is gone, and so I have to go back and kind of go back and forth with that. But yeah, man, what Colin is doing would be a nightmare for my artists, because I did that. I did that to them. The first issue we worked on, I had like this whole like panel one. Imagine this and that and this, and he was like, I can't do that. That's like too much. We really like, I just want you to tell me like what the action is. Like just, the thing that helped me is like when you write the script, capitalize the action in that, like the word of the active word, whatever action it is, capitalize it. Like if I'm saying opened, capitalize opened, or whatever it is. And that really helped me improve my writing as well. Because I would have like done so many elaborate things to just describe that scene and the location and all that stuff. But he said, focus on the action. Tell me what are the key things on the background that need to be there for the story, and leave it up to me. I was like, got it. Now my scripts are really like to the point. They're like maybe maximum like 3 sentences or so like that per panel, and they really help, especially with the creative process. He just makes it beautiful.
That's awesome. Ignacio wrote, as a Spanish-speaking cartoonist, I appreciate your efforts to overcome the language barrier, but we all need to step it up and use the magic that technology provides to do a better job. And that's absolutely. But
but
talking about using Google Earth to add to it, and like just thinking, wait, I can't just speak like to my buddies in high school to a Frenchman, or a Polish artist is not going to get these things. So we have to think about it.
Can you imagine inflicting a hey Charlie? Can you imagine inflicting an Alan Moore script on somebody whose first language is not English?
Yeah,
it would be that's just cruel and unusual. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to be Alan Moore to do an Alan Moore, and
Yeah.
I would just say let's not pretend we're Alan Moore.
Yeah.
Charlie says Bucky Dent tangents, another reason to always tune in to Explain Yourself. Absolutely,
See, it was worth it.
we are going to take these rides. Well, Lauren, we kind of talked about Sacrifice or your art team for a second, but let's get into the project. This is, biblical fantasy. So the guy that writes sorry English people from England tart is I'm in you're definitely speaking to this audience. So I'm going to pull it up while you talk about Sacrifice.
Oh, you got White Ash.
White Ash.
Yeah. I was like, is that really Charlie?
Yeah.
Like,
Wait. Look, you got
White
to
Ash. It's one of my favorite series.
I'll do
Yeah.
one. I'll
Yeah.
do one better, Bezarat. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, baby.
Nice. Yeah, we will take any time to shout out White Ash on this show, Charlie. Yeah, we like to mess with him a little bit, but god damn, that guy can write a comic book.
And he can find artists. I mean, Connor and Romina. I mean, come on, man. Let us work with some of the artists too, okay?
So Sacrifice, I did get to read issue 1. I backed the first Kickstarter, and I kind of loved the beginning. I'm going to ask you one question on your religion. How much do you fall back on Judeo-Christian, biblical history, or are you just kind of doing some crazy make-em-ups within the framework?
So what I'm gonna do with this is a mix of everything, where it's like there's no one that's explicitly right. Every religion that does come up in here, which it's not a big focus, but it's there. There's a little piece you could find from each thing. So it's like, okay, there's not one who's explicitly right or one that's explicitly wrong, because I didn't want to do that. So being that like Lucifer is basically the main antagonist, is like, okay, so with me like growing up Christian, like non-denominational, it's like that's the one I'd have the most basis in. So it's the easiest for me to focus that in, but that's not going to be like, hey, this is the case.
Right. Your artist, do you work with him on these designs, or is it just give me 4 demons and he plays? Because these designs are creepy, man.
It's actually me. So I come up with the demon designs, because one thing I've always really liked, and I don't see it as often as I feel like I want to, is like you see all these things with monsters or demon designs. It's like, okay, that's a cool design. But when you see it like 1,000 times, because that's like the series monster or whatever, it's like, okay, it's not cool anymore, but kind of loses its punch. So I really want to go out of my way for like, if I make a demon design, I like it. Okay, sweet, I love it. I will never use it again, and I'll come up with something else later on. So, which this is a little bit hard with him being in Taiwan. Like I have to really explain some things. So like, I have some like really out there ideas for a lot of stuff. So like sometimes it's like pretty big blocks, and we like work together on it. And unfortunately, I use a lot of reference pictures too for him. And he mentioned one time where we did an interview together, and with him being in Taiwan 12 hours ahead of me, there's times I got off of work, I was like, oh, use this as a design. Use this as this from this from like just some reference images. And he mentioned there's a time it's like, you sent me something, and I immediately deleted it because I was about to go to bed and I couldn't handle that. So I apologize. So I was like, okay, from now on, like I'll when I wake up, when it's like midday for you, that's when I would send you something. So as far as designs go, if it's anything that's like gonna get a lot of play, I typically design them myself. And if it's like, hey, now I need like 4 demons or whatnot, and I don't really have anything specific, then I let him just kind of play around with what he wants.
Do you have an art background, or have you always drawn?
I could draw stick figures like no one's business, but like that's as far as it goes. So I drew one thing. There's one thing in the series that I did draw, and it's like a stupid reveal for what the villains are, because it's like I mentioned it's a horror comedy, and when it comes to me in comedy, I'm like, okay, is it dumb? Okay, can I make it dumber? And there's like there's something I drew, and I was like, okay, I want this to be stupid. Can we do this in the book? And he's like, I'm just gonna copy paste that, because yes. I was like, all right, sweet. It's gonna be an issue too. Which in the preview you see the that's right. So you don't see the reveal of it, But you see Damien drawing, the main character's name is Damien, in the preview, like when he's like explaining what's going on in the world. And the next page of that is where you see like what my drawing is. So I can say that I am an artist to an extent, a terrible one, but it works.
Writers who can't draw solidarity, Kickstarter Roundtable. I raise my glass to you.
Well, actually, that's pretty interesting because I often give Kevin a little bit of crap because he'll actually kind of sketch out his issues for Ludo as you write the script, right? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
terribly, extraordinarily badly. Yes, my first draft is thumbnails of the page because I don't really understand how much real estate I have on a page until I've drawn out the panels. So I always fear that I'd give him either 6 pages that are literally 6 panels of action, or 1 page that has 42 panels because I don't, so I draw it out and then I give him carte blanche to fix my terrible sequentials. But and they're terrible. They're really bad. I don't want to. I guarantee everybody on this thing is better than me because I've seen my art.
So I do a similar thing that you do, Kevin, where I sketch out as well, like in the page. Like for me, that's the first. Like my first draft is always it goes through that poor sketch, and putting like I have this app called Comic Draw. It's on like iPad and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. So I use that to just kind of sketch things out and put things there. But I don't provide. I write the script after that, and I don't provide those sketches to Stan unless he specifically asks me, "Hey, I don't really understand what you mean by this panel or this page. Can you help me understand?" And the reason I used to do that at the beginning, I used to provide him all the sketches, but what I realized is that it almost like restricts Stan's creativity when I provide him the sketches. Sometimes it's just like it's an easy way out too, right? It's just like, oh yeah, you want it this way? All right, fine, I'll just do it that way. But whenever I actually I do the sketch, then I write out the panel, the action I'm seeing, saying, okay, this is what this panel is about, and then I give it to him. The thing he draws is like 10 times more amazing than what I sketched out. Yeah. That process though, it rings true to me as far as like the writing process.
Nice.
No, I agree totally. How do Laurent, we're talking about your book. So do you write full script? You kind of give just a basis? How do you write your comic?
So I write out the full script. Like I adjust it like as we go on. Sometimes if he has some tips, he's like, "Hey, so I know you have like 6 panels here, but we're trying to do this with the action. It would flow a bit better if we have like 4." So it's very fluid during the process, and we just started working together like for this, and we're trying to like really feel each other out. And I feel like we've really hit a really good rhythm, which is why I'm really excited for issue 2. But I do typically write out the full script ahead of time. I leave most of the stuff fairly vague because I tell him like, okay, I know what I want drawn, but I trust you to know how to do what you need to do better than what I know what I want. So I'll put this here. If you feel like something works better, you have free reign to like, be like, hey, just come to me, be like, hey, I want to do this instead. I think this might look better. 9 times out of 10, it does, because there's been times before where it's like, there was just a misunderstanding of the script. Like you mentioned, it's like this misunderstanding script, and he's like, okay, this is what I got. And like, that's like 5 times better than what I wanted. So I mean, it's very fluid, but yeah, I do write out the scripts in full.
Let's go. I one time he painted Ludo painted the comic, and I wanted the kids to run away from Tart, and they ran at her, but he had painted it, So I was like, okay, I guess this kid's kind of violent. All right.
Was that in the
like,
issue 2, or was that in a different issue?
Yeah, that was issue 2. Yeah.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't ask an artist to change something he's already painted. Maybe if he draws, but painted, I guess as a writer, I'm just going to have to deal with it. Have you ever had an issue where he made a change that you felt didn't work and you had to rein it in?
There was one, because like I mentioned, it's a horror comedy thing, and like some of the comedy here doesn't work there. And I was like, okay, I want this here. And there was a panel. He was like, it didn't really work. I was like, listen, it's very dumb, but I need it there for the giggles. Like that's it. You're not gonna get it. He's like, okay, I need to move some stuff around for that to work. I was like, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There have been some times that was in issue 1. And we haven't really had that at all with 2. It's been very, very smooth sailings, and like I feel like we kind of really got a good like vibe off each other and what we're trying to do.
How many issues is Sacrifice thought to go? And I'm gonna, after you answer, I'm gonna ask everybody because I forgot to ask each project. Is this a miniseries? Is it ongoing?
So it depends, because my goal is I do want to like pitch it out to a publisher probably after like 3 or 4 is out. Like I'll start like shopping around, and I have like 3 like logical places I could end it at. The shortest one being like 12, where it's like, okay, if it's like doing well but not like well enough to like really keep going, like I can end it at 12. I forgot the number for the second one, but like I can go for a bit, and I want to, because I feel like there's a lot I can do here, especially with like how it's very character driven, and when we meet the rest of the main characters in the issue 2, you can kind of get a vibe for like, okay, there's some stuff here. So no hard number, but worst case scenario would be 12.
Yeah, you've got a couple off ramps if you need to take them. That's cool. Colin, I think you said 5 issues for by the time we get to Dallas, right?
5 or bust. Yeah.
5 or bust. Okay. All right.
Plus the prequel, so technically 10, but yeah, five production cycles, because I'm old. I can't do this. I gotta finish this thing.
You only get so many sabbaticals,
exactly.
right?
The one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How about Duplicate? How long is this? Does it have a defined ending?
The first story arc is what I'm crowdfunding now. It's the last issue of the first story arc. And when I initially came up with this series, before I knew what I was getting myself into, I was like, I'll just do 15. That's easy, right? Like 15. And then I was like, oh, what did I do with myself? So I'm probably looking at closer to 10. I have to sketch out, like I know what's happening in the back half, but I don't have it as finely tuned as the first half. So it's going to depend on how that breaks down in the page by page breakdowns, whether it ends up being 5 or 6 or, whatever it's going to take to get it done.
No, that's great. How about Zoofan?
I'm thinking 5 issues. However, each issue is probably going to be a little bit longer than a regular, like 22-page issue. But yeah, 5 is also what I'm aiming for, like Colin.
Well, we had Charlie on. Charlie taught us that when you're kickstarting a book, it should be as many pages as you need to tell your story. White Ash #1 was like either 48 or 52 pages, and it's fabulous. So
right. Well, the beauty of being rejected by publishers is like, who gives a fuck, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't be 22 pages, it doesn't be 24 pages. It can be all the pages, like
all the pages.
It doesn't matter. I was all worked up, like everything's got to be 22 pages. I'm like, no, I'm the publisher. No one else wanted to do it. I can make as many pages as I want. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's kind of nice.
Well, I mean, where do you guys kind of fall, on an issue length? I know I've kind of hit a rhythm where I like 24 pages, and a lot of that comes back to finances, because I love artists. Artists are awesome. They do a tremendous amount of work, and they deserve to, probably have a living wage, so I pay them as much.
Did you say probably?
Probably.
That is a writer. You're like, yeah, probably. I don't know.
But so for me, it really, a lot of it is down to just the finances of it, and 24 pages being more than what Marvel and DC are doing these days. I think what they have 20 pages of story at this point.
Mhm.
I think they're going to try to get down to about 7.5.
Yeah. Okay.
$11.99, get 7.5 good pages.
Yeah.
An ad right on the
And
bottom.
then an ad.
The last one.
Mine all seem to be 32, then 34, then 36, and I'm betting the last two will probably hit 40 and above. But that's just because the writing part and the producing part is not nearly as hard as the kickstarting part for me. So I'd rather have fewer, longer books as long as it works well with the story. So
I can hear that.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, mine has been like 24, like Will, and with Zoofan is I'm pushing it a little bit. I think Zoofan is at 32, 28 to 32 for Zoofan, but yeah, usually 24 is also my page.
Would I go in with a goal of telling a story between 18 and 24 pages, and if it's done at 18, I try not to go further because I don't want to put in filler if I can get a good solid chunk of a story, even if it's shorter. But most of my stories are 24, 28, or 32. They have all, inched out to the longer. I've got a couple. I feel good when I get 24 at this point, but Tart 4 was actually 16 pages because Ludo and I couldn't figure out where to put the 2-page interlude that I wrote. So I just put it at the end of issue 5 because we could never figure out where that one went. So I was like, shh, don't tell everybody. It's only 16 pages.
Put it on heavier paper. No one will notice.
Yeah. No one's called me on it. So sorry. I'm going to get a bunch of emails. I was watching Explain Yourself. I did. I'm sorry.
When I first was like writing at least the first issue, I was like, okay, well, everyone says the standard's 22. I'll write 22 page rate. And like, I was like, okay, that's not going to work. And I hit a certain point where like, I leave a lot of stuff unanswered, but like on purpose. Like everything is all structured in a way where like, I don't want to cram world building and everything down someone's throat. I'm like, okay, I'll tell you the information you need to know to understand what's going on right now. I'll give you a bit more, so as far as war or not. But I'm going like to get to everything. And when I was at 22, I was like, man, I can't do everything that like do like the basics and like have the story flow well. And I got to a point where it's like, okay, 28 pages of story, and that seemed to be a sweet spot both for that one and issue 2. So now, like for me, and it's like, okay, I'm going to try and make 28 pages of story like the standard. I mean, there's times I can do less, but I feel comfortable just having like one length so people can, when they come back issue by issue, they know what they're getting each time. They know how much they're going to get.
And I feel like structure is, at least to me, is so important. I feel like I need to know how many pages that I have to fill so I can then arrange things the way I want.
Right.
I'm working on something now that I've just said, here's the things that have to happen. And I just started writing it, and I'm up to page 70 now. And I'm like, maybe I got another 140 pages. I don't know. What the hell? What is this thing?
Constraints are vastly underrated for writing. Like the best thing you can do is limit yourself in ways so that you don't go crazy. So like when I was sitting in that basement for a month, my idea was, I'm going to make this be 4 22-page books because I can finish that in some conceivable stretch of time. Anything more than that or any ongoing series just wasn't going to happen. And I did that. And then I realized I had no idea what I was doing writing sequential art, that I was packing way too many actions in each panel, and it was way too dense and too many Bucky Dent jokes and needed to stretch it out. So now those books have all grown by 50%, but still having done that initial exercise, keeping it really compact was great because I didn't become George Martin, and so limiting yourself in ways from the beginning, I think, is a really good tool.
Ignacio says that they started the Killaroo Simplify with 36 pages, then went to 44, ended up at 50, but could have been a 100-page book if we decompress the per page panel count. Yeah, I mean, you can allow yourself to go crazy, and if it works for the book, that's okay. But you're an artist, so you know that every page is however many hours of your life it takes to draw a page, and you'd like the artist's life to not, like Will said, we probably don't want our artists to have a terrible life. So you want to give them a book that's doable, and they can enjoy themselves a little bit.
Well, I mean, because it's, I could literally type, and this army of 300 soldiers and this army of 1,000 soldiers are fighting. Panel 1, done.
Yeah.
And then an artist has to live with that for a day.
My buddy Juan Fernandez at Creature Entertainment, he writes the books that he draws, and he says artist Juan hates writer Juan. Because he's like, I'm writing it, and I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool if there were like 20 zombies coming over a fence. And he's like, and then I gotta draw it. And like all of a sudden there's only 3 zombies climbing the fence, and then there's 17 shadows in the background.
Yeah, try writing a book where 80% of the world's population walks to one spot on the globe, and give that to an artist. I feel terrible. I didn't realize what I was doing. So like, I'll just say, like, we should, every panel basically will say, like, this is the action in the foreground, but in the background, if you think you can do it, we should probably see some people just walking west.
We should probably
every single panel,
people.
and you just got to decide. And I feel terrible. The next 2 books are going to be tough. Like, as we get closer, there's just going to be a very dense population. So he's going to quit.
I think he's on the trip to Dallas. I think you're going to be good.
We'll see.
You know what I recommend, Colin? Make him like use the duplicate panel strategy. Where you make one and then you tweak the other ones just a little bit more, but you can still tell the story.
Right. I need like the Lord of the Rings thing where it just like one elf becomes 400 elves, and they just that's what I need. Yeah.
Well, how involved are you with kind of the art production side? Are any of your teams fully digital? Are they still doing traditional? I mean, what's that look like, or do you know, or does it even matter to you?
As long as the page, I mean, for my artist, I can speak. Like, he does phenomenal work, in my opinion. So he could he'd get a little drawing tablet and put the pen between his toes for all I care. Like, he does fantastic work. So as long as it comes out looking good.
Yeah, I think he does like volume sketches on actual paper and then transfers it over, and then does the detailed line work. I love the real pen on paper and pencil on paper. So I always wish I had original art to look at and to sell and put on the wall. I have almost none, but whatever works. Yeah.
I always tell Ludo, I'm like, do it any way you want to. I mean, if you do physical, you've got that thing to sell too, and we can add it as a Kickstarter, reward. But I'm not the one. So if you can digitally do a page in 6 hours and physically it takes you 18, it's your choice, man.
Rock on.
Yeah.
Carla, please go on. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Mariana does everything on the computer, but if she wanted to, if she had the time, I know she can do it all by hand, because she's constantly posting stuff to her Instagram that she's done completely by hand, and you cannot tell the difference between what she does by hand with what she does on the computer. Layla, who does my covers, did everything by hand, and so for the first couple of Kickstarters, I had her original line work as a tier that you could buy the original cover, but then issue 5 was the first one that she did digitally, and she said she had moved away from doing the line work with a pen and had moved over to digital fully at that point. So it's all now it's all digital, but again, you can't tell the difference at all with it.
Kevin West says traditional art, so you can get paid twice for the work. I think that
Absolutely.
I think that the consensus is the artist gets to make that choice. It's if they do it physically, the page is theirs to sell, but if they feel like they can do it digitally and faster, then they can, their hourly rate goes up in that way. And I don't get in Ludo's way. He can do whatever he wants. And I think that's what I'm hearing from everybody on this panel.
I'm kind of curious to hear from you guys because I don't know what I'm doing.
Welcome to Explain Yourself, the show where nobody knows what they're doing, but we're having a great time.
How many of you guys get like rough volume sketches first, and how involved are you in that initial kind of layout of the page and of the panels? Because I find that I'm consistently getting pages, like my initial rough volume panels, and I'm so happy that someone has even drawn anything I wrote. Like, this looks amazing. Yes. And then I just hit the send button immediately. And then 2 days later, I'm like, wait a second, that person needed to be over here. And I realized like little things. And I'm just really a bad editor in the very beginning when I get art, because I'm just like a fanboy. I'm just like so psyched that it's art. And
Colin, can I introduce you to Chuck Pino?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't want that guy.
I got his blurb. That's all I need from him.
Right, exactly.
No, you're right. I'm almost the exact same way, which is why having that editor is great, because I've learned to not hit send until everybody else weighs in at this point, and invariably, James Powell, who writes House of Fear for Dark Horse and has kickstarted several things. He's our editor now, and he catches a lot of things. I'm like, oh, that's why you make the mediocre bucks, man. Good job. But I think you're right, because I'm glad you said that, because I feel the same way. Like, he drew something I wrote. This is the best thing ever.
I try very hard to shut that part of my brain up, because I know that this is the thing that he did quickly. And if I don't pay attention to it, now he's going to do the thing that takes him forever. And if I missed that, then I've caused him labor. So I do try to definitely sit down and go, did he really? Now, of course, if he changes the layout, I don't care, because like I think Laurent, he's got artistic knowledge and academic work. He knows how to tell a story sequentially, whereas I just in theory know how to tell a story. So I do get out of the way if he makes changes with where it is, but I do try to sit back and go, all right, if he's going to spend a day on this page and I missed it in the thumbnails, then that's sort of on me and not on him. So I do try to go slow at that point. And then, you can always change dialogue and narration to go with what an artist does, unless it completely contradicts what you're going for. And then you have to have no, I need that panel. It's a joke. It's a stupid joke, but I need that panel right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin's approach. I mean, of course, I really empathize with Colin and Will's comment about getting the art, getting super excited, carried away. That's how I was in the first few issues of our works. And then what I started doing is I would letter it, like with just a mock-up. And when I did that, I'd be like, oh, you know what? Like, this thing is missing, or this thing is like changed in a way that it doesn't work with the story.
Or Zoofan is speaking first, and you've got her on the right side of the panel, or something like
exactly,
that.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And, or what I would find is like Stan would like completely eliminate a panel and merge them into one, and I'll be like, wow, this worked a lot better than I originally wrote it, and so this is great. Let's keep going. But yeah, so I have that take a step back moment of saying, okay, let me put the dialogue on. Would I be able to adjust the dialogue to fit this out, layout or what he did? And then if I have, if I feel good about it, it's like, hey, it's good to go. We've gone so much faster through this process, from the beginning. When we first started out, it used to be like, I used to be such a like, my God, did we do it right? Should I check more and all that stuff? And now it's more like, he got it. I already know, so. Yeah.
And Ignacio says that he finds useful just the same thing. As an artist, he letters the layouts. So he's doing that on his own, which is actually a really, if you have time to do it, a brilliant way to do it. But, if the writer can do it as well, it doesn't matter who does it. Just, it does give you a better sense of, really, do we have room,
Mm-hmm.
We writers like to put 800 words in every balloon, and kind of we need to realize that we're taking up too much space too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something I find myself. I count words. I really do. I'll go back through the script, and I'll use. Alan Moore had kind of his guidelines, and I try to use those same guidelines. This many words max in a balloon, unless it's something special or something, this many words per panel, this many words per page, and try to keep to that. And I don't know, it can be very hard sometimes, especially, if, and a great letterer is awesome. Brant has saved us a few times just because I'm like, I crammed too much crap, all right, in that caption or in that word balloon. Can we maybe float? Maybe we can move it to the next panel, or maybe we can, make it work. And really good letterers make it work, and they control the flow. They make it look good because it is graphic design too, and it's just it's amazing what they can do.
What's your word count limit?
Yeah, I'm writing all this down because
I'll tell you mine. Mine is 40 per page.
40 per page.
40 words?
Wow.
40 words per page.
What?
Wow. Mine is. I'm
going to take a look.
Let me take a look. I wrote it down so I wouldn't have to remember.
I have about 40 in my first panel that I just.
I do no more than 25, like in a balloon, but
yeah. That's what I believe I've heard of Alan Moore's 25 per balloon.
25 per balloon.
And it's something like 150 per page as a max. Not, but I don't remember what the real max is. But 25 per balloon sounds like what I remember.
I'll have to go back and rewrite all these.
Listen, like, crap. Yes, that's it's all true. But then go back and read, like, almost everybody of my age got into this medium because of one guy, Chris Claremont.
Yes.
He puts like 42,000 words in a comic. It's fine.
Okay, so Alan Moore in this interview, I think you can. I think it's online, but I just have it in a text file so I can pop it up and go. All right, start counting, Monkey Boy. But basically, about 210 words per page maximum, and then divide that by the number of panels you have. So if you have 2 panels, that'd be 105 words per panel. And then he says, never go over, 25 words per balloon max. So,
my sincerest apologies. I just realized that I said 40 per page instead of 40 per panel.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's all. So I was like,
I was so excited to see your economy of scale on this.
I was going to be like, wow, that is some serious. I cut a lot, but I don't think I
No,
cut that
no,
much.
spot on. I apologize. That's me. That's on me.
No, that's fine. It's fine. No,
I would never be able to do the counting thing. That would make my mind explode. The way I do it is it's two things. It's a visual thing. Obviously, if it looks like I've jammed too much in a balloon, and not even when it's lettered, like just when I'm reading it on my script, but also it's the way it flows. And I think a lot of that comes from my time in film and TV when I worked in editing and just, reading scripts all the time as a script coordinator. A lot of it is just like, does it feel like it's reading well? Does it feel like there's a flow to just the whole comic, not even like each page, but also just the comic as a whole? Does it feel like I've edited it together in the right way where there's no bumps in the road? And it's more of just a sense that I have with my writing than a technical thing. I'm never one of those people that's like, all right, on this page, I'm at, this plot point, and on this page, I have to get to this plot point. I've never been able to do that, even with all the film and TV courses I've taken over my life. I have to just be like, okay, this feels like the right place to put this at this point, and then, all right, I have to have this at this point, and I always try to end on a big cliffhanger on every issue, which you probably noticed from reading 1 and 2.
I think you're right, because it feels a lot more organic that way. Oh wait, it's page 33, so I have to end the first act, and I have to be, in the. But yeah, it feels more natural when you get there in a more natural way. At least, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, because it's hard, because then it feels like you're jamming it in. Well, it has to happen on this page. But what if it doesn't? That's not the page. Like, what if it's 6.5 instead of 5?
One of the things that I prefer as a reader, not as a writer, as a reader, is to feel like I got to the cliffhanger in the end in the natural course, because sometimes you'll read and like I read Marvel, I read DC, but sometimes it feels like you hit page 22 and you hit a great cliffhanger. Like I'm not knocking the cliffhanger. And then you realize that page 12 through 18 was fluff that had nothing to do with the story because they had the cliffhanger and they just had to expand to it. And, like when you make that realization, you're like, oh, I kind of, and,
yeah.
And there, obviously the craftsmanship and the skill is there, but it feels a little soulless, and that's why I love, like, Charlie Stickney's like, yeah, I'm going to write 43 pages. That was what the chunk that felt right for this issue, and the next one might be 38, but it's and then you have idiots like me that have a 16-page comic. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that, but
I feel like for me, I lucked out with some of that, with the fact that the series does have comedy elements, because it's like there were certain times where I was like scripting out, like, future issues where it's like, okay, I know I want to be 28 pages of story. I have like 2 pages because I have an extra page where it's like, okay, I know where my page turn is going to be. Can I throw something like just something really dumb? Like there's a Bigfoot gag in issue 1, and like literally came up because like, okay, I need whatever, and that spun into like, okay, I can do a lot with this. I can make this a recurring thing, and I won't go into it, but like there's going to be a reveal for Bigfoot's name, and I've told to a few people. I don't mind saying it, like, after the podcast, like literally no one's not laughed when I mentioned how I'm going to do this. It's like, okay, sweet, I can just I have extra pages. What's the dumbest thing I can think of? Let me throw it in there, and typically, I've gotten laughs from that. So
that's the fun of a comedy. A comedy you can put in beats, and that's great. We got a question from Blake. Is that a positive for crowdfunding, to keep that natural organic flow and not worry about page counts, ad placement, etc., or is too much freedom a bad thing? And I think the answer is yes to both and no to both. Kind of.
It depends, I guess, on, because it will drive your funding goal, right? Because if you have a longer page, longer book, you're gonna want to accommodate for your printing costs. They level up a little bit.
More shipping if it's really thick.
Yeah,
exactly. But I think that in general, fans, at least from my experience, backers I take it positively when you give them more content. Even as stretch goals or anything like that. When you're like, oh, we'll add X more pages for as a behind the scenes, or X more pages. They really enjoy that.
I know for me with issue 5, that was the first time I'd gone over my 22, 24 page count. I went up to 34, and I think the first draft of the script is almost 40 pages, but we pulled a big scene out because, well, there's a couple reasons we pulled it out. One was money. And then 2 was I'd really struggled with getting issue 5 written for a number of different reasons. And so my artist, who usually takes 6 months to just draw 22 pages, suddenly had 6 months, maybe a little bit less, to draw 34 pages. And so she was being put in a position I had never put her in before to kind of level that up. And then, at that point, since I already had a publisher, before I even gave her the script, I was like, are you guys going to print this? Because it's a bit bigger than what I normally give you. I was like, does it matter? Do you care about the page count? And thank God they were like, yeah, we don't care. I'm like, you sure? Because it's going to be over 10 pages more than normal. And it's fine. I was
can
like,
we give your publisher a shout out?
Yeah, it's a Second Sight Publishing, and they've been really great. They're a new company. My book is one of the first books that they're publishing, and they're based out of Mississippi and Florida. I believe it's one of the few Black-owned publishers around. So they're pretty awesome, and they're always looking for new material. And they've been great. And they actually, I've already gotten my 2 checks for my first 2 issues already, which, from what I understand, is pretty unheard of to have that happen this quickly. So it's a big plus.
I think that would shock writers for Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So Second Sight, I've got to look into it. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that you do have to have these conversations with the publisher. This is going to be longer. What do you feel about that? And normally they can do something this way or that way, but there are many publishers that would say, well, you can crowdfund your 34-page comic, and then you figure out how to get it to 22-page to us, and we'll publish it. So it's nice to know that they rolled with you.
Thank God. Because I don't know what I would have done.
So for my take on Blake's question, I mentioned if you read my first issue, I'm very big on action. I really like my action scenes. I mentioned the comedy already. There's a specific word to use in it, which was flow, and that's no matter how much action or how many jokes or world building, the 2 things that dictate anything I ever put into an issue, or one, does it make sense with the characters? Does it flow with them? Because everything I do is kind of it's meant to flow naturally with them. I'm not gonna have like Family Guy-ish gags where you cut away to something because you want it to be funny, so it flows with them. And then 2, the issue, does it flow naturally? Is it does it feel abrupt? And everyone has their own methods. With me sticking at 32, I feel like it's a little bit easier for me to consistently get everything out that I need to. I can make sure I keep my same pace, and because I've already scripted out the first arc. The first arc's gonna be 6 issues. Not detailed script. I mean, I finished the detailed script of issue 3 because we're gonna start drawing issue 3 in 2 weeks. But as long as you hit a point where, regardless of what you want to do, even if your page count gets higher on the next one, it flows well. In my opinion, that's what matters the most. Because when someone's reading it, if it's poorly paced, that's gonna take them back, take them out of the experience. So as long as you're hitting that, if you get more pages or the same number of pages or less pages, doesn't matter, as long as the reading experience is good.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that's what we're gonna do on ours. But before Will and I are gonna start talking about the Kickstarter campaigns that are still alive for the books that creators who have been nice enough to come on the show previously. But before we do that, I'm going to put each URL up on the screen. You want to do that a 30-second pitch for Sacrifice one more time in case somebody missed the beginning?
Yeah, sure. So Sacrifice is a horror comedy series that I like to throw out as Hellboy meets Evil Dead, where a man whose soul is tied to Lucifer is using his demonic powers to fight evil while also gaining allies that can stop Lucifer when he is summoned, with the side note of making enough money to keep the lights on.
A little Good Omens meets Angel feel to that. All right, Colin. By the time we get to Dallas,
is a let's see, if you like ER meets Walking Dead meets Why the Last Man. The story of what happens when 80% of the human race starts migrating to a single point on the globe, while a failing medical student sets out across the disintegrating U.S. to rescue his girlfriend, become a doctor, confront a murderous militia that's using the migration to start a new world order, and find a cure for the migration impulse that will save or maybe destroy humanity.
nice.
I gave you a whole different pitch this time just to try.
Yeah, I noticed. I'm very, very proud of you. No pressure at all. But you know,
After you say that, it's pressure.
so much.
So much pressure.
Zoofan. Okay, so Zoofan is a Pan-African sci-fi story that recounts the true story, the true history of Italian invasion of Ethiopia in the 1800s. If you like stories that mash up history and fiction, history and comics like Mouse by Art Spiegelman, or you know, sci-fi fantasy like Star Wars, Star Trek, and all these things, then I think you'd love this book.
I cannot wait to get into that. All right. Where is Duplicate? Somewhere here. There it is.
Okay, so Duplicant is Minority Report meets Repo the Genetic Opera, and it's set in the future during a pandemic of organ failure and focuses on a scientist who becomes a victim of his own technology.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, you four are welcome to stick with Will and I as we talk about some of the campaigns that are still live. Sure. If you decide not to, I want to thank you very much for spending your Friday evening and a bit of your Saturday morning with us. It was a blast, and it was very nice to meet electronically all of you. But to be honest, most of you this week is the first time that I've gotten to kind of communicate, and this comic world is getting bigger and smaller at the same time, and it was absolute pleasure getting to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. This was a blast. Totally fun.
This was really awesome. It was great meeting you guys. Colin, great to see you.
Hey, great to finally talk, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Our absolute pleasure, and this is where the show just
a bunch of the
dive bombs as Will and I try to get into. It's just chaos at this point. But I've got Savage Sasquatch is the banner just above Zoofan, so we're gonna do that one first. Will, you know, Laurent, you talked about Bigfoot. How about Bigfoot in space?
Yeah.
And
So I actually stumbled on this like maybe 3 days ago, and I was like, I've never seen something more up my alley than this. I backed it immediately.
It's the best high concept ever.
Last week,
it's so awesome.
Yeah. We asked him for his 30-second pitch, and he went Bigfoot in space.
Yeah.
I was like,
That's all you need.
That is it.
Bigfoot in space and loving it. 6 words, all you need. Like that's the best comic pitch I've ever seen. It's one of my favorite stories. I love it.
Before we get to the next one, Kevin, my alter Kevin ego says thank you all for being here, and I just wanted to make sure you saw that before we did.
I'm glad to be here. It's been real fun.
Oh, let me see if I can pull this up. Carly, you wanted us to mention Monster Matador.
Yeah, so Stephen Prince is one of my good friends. We met at a comic book writing class I took at the now shuttered Meltdown Comics that was in West Hollywood. And he is a writer-creator, and he has this ongoing series called Monster Matador, and he's currently crowdfunding the issue called Monster Matador Apocalypse, where there's a kaiju-style monster in Africa, and the Matador, who is fighting all these monsters, has to go there to fight this monster. It's really awesome. He's got a bunch of other comic creators that are making cameos in this comic. David Schrader, who does Baby Badass with Christian Van Horn, and Ryland Grant. They're all making cameos in this book. Oh, and Ryland does Banjax and Aberrant, and he has The Jump, and Suicide Jockeys is out right now in stores. And oh my gosh, what's the other series he has?
The Bankrupt is the
Peacekeepers. Peacekeepers. Yes. Yeah. So he's got like a gazillion series. So he's that guy right there with the cap. If you scroll back, yeah, see the guy with the eyeglasses and the little cap and the blue shirt. That's Ryland. And then the other big dude with all the muscles, that's supposed to be David Schrader.
Wait a minute, I've met David.
Yeah, no, he's not as buff as that.
We don't know how he spent his pandemic. Some of us, drink and eat bonbons.
Well, he has a new baby, so he's very happily busy with his baby boy.
Oh, nice. Oh, the artwork is astounding. I hadn't seen this yet. So Fabio Alves, I believe, is the artist on this, and he also does a lot of books for Ryland as well.
Yeah, this looks really cool. I was looking at it yesterday.
Man,
and so what Stephen and Ryland and I do is we all read each other's scripts. So like Ryland actually just sent me issue 3 for The Jump to read and give notes. So anytime any of us write anything, we send it to each other for notes. So we're our own little writing group, which is something actually, that's a good point, just in general, to have like a group of fellow comic book writers that you trust to look at your script before you send it to your artist.
Oh yeah, another set of eyeballs is always great. Just
absolutely
catch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. So Charlie Stickney says Stephen Prince is always worth a back. So if Charlie says it, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me get back to the banners and.
Okay, thanks, guys. I gotta go to sleep.
Hey, you have a happy Elsa birthday party for your son.
I will. I'm sure he's gonna love having Elsa here.
Good night. It was
Bye,
nice
guys.
All right.
Let's see.
Snowpaw, our buddy Rob Multari. Snowpaw is a prequel to the Nightwolf series where we kind of learn how the lead character of Nightwolf's mentor, Snowpaw, gets her werewolf powers. And Rob Multari is a friend in our comics community and just a great, great dude. And this is a fun action adventure. And Rob doesn't pull any punches. If you've read Nightwolf, you might walk home and parents might be nailed to an altar. And I was like, oh shit. So Rob's not afraid to go there. And somebody else who's not afraid to go there is Max Fuchs, who wrote the motherfucking fucker #1, which is a balls to the wall gonzo wrestling sci-fi fantasy alien thing. And just as gonzo and bonkers as it sounds, Max Max was drinking absinthe with us. So
the motherfucking fucker #1. It is its own thing. And
it is. It's fun. It's out there. And is Road Trip to Hell still live?
It ends October 31st.
Okay. Road Trip to Hell is kind of up Lawrence alley.
My bank account's gonna hate me. What is this one?
To be honest, doing this show, Will and I are like, because we don't bring people on if we don't think the book is worth backing.
Which means we back it. Exactly.
And so we do back them all. Now, sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's full, but so the Son of Lucifer, so this up your alley, but he doesn't have any idea that he is the son of Lucifer, inherits hell, as long as any of the evil people in hell doesn't kill him first. So it's basically a decent normal guy gets the keys to hell, but anybody who is in hell can conspire to murder him and take it over, and basically chaos ensues.
Definitely check that out. That sounds really interesting. It sounds like something up my alley, which like my fiance is gonna be livid like at the end of the month when like all the Kickstarter bills hit me. It's like what happened to all our money? I'm like, okay, I have a problem.
This show ruins bank accounts. That's right, we do, and we're proud of it, and we're not going to apologize.
It doesn't just ruin them; it destroys them.
We talked a little bit about What Follows is True, the Crescent Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 240-page hardcover documentary,
fully painted.
The artwork is astounding, and
I'll look that up.
I started the interview. I was going to ask him how he got 240 pages of story out of this hotel, and as he talked about the research he did, I don't know how it's not 1,000. The story behind this hotel, it was once, a hotel for the rich and famous in Arkansas, and once a girls' college, I believe, and once a cancer hotel run by a complete charlatan who said he could cure cancer with like 9 different poisons that he gave to his people, killed every one of them that came to the hotel to cure their cancer.
Actually worked. They did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, the cancer no longer lived in people's bodies that were dead. It's extraordinary. So
this looks amazing. I'm looking at it on my phone right now. Wow.
Yeah, it's the Crescent's in Eureka Springs. I'm in Northwest Arkansas, actually, and Sean is too, Sean Fitzgibbon. And Eureka Springs is this just really interesting little town, nestled here in Northwest Arkansas that is kind of weird and kind of kooky, and weird things like this happen. Oh, and by the way, the Crescent Hotel is also supposed to be haunted at this point.
Why wouldn't it be?
Why not?
Be, right?
And that's what we have live. I mean, we've got a couple coming up. Slice of Life, our buddies Phil and Kat are doing Slice of Life, a queer webtoon. We're going to have at Thunderduck on Twitter is doing Lift. He's Jason Ford, a good buddy from when I first got on Twitter, and was like, I'm going to try to find comic people. All of his comics are extraordinary. He's going to be on in a couple weeks, and I think we've got another one that's coming on soon. Return to the Toy Store. Steph and Matt are going to be on in the next couple weeks. So haven't read them, but you're going to hear about them on Explain Yourself. Thank you to the Geek Collective for giving us a home to have these chats with, and all of our guests, but Colin and Laurent, you're still here. I want to thank you personally for chatting with us. It was blessed.
Thank you so much for having us. This was awesome.
This has been a lot of fun. I loved it. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, anytime you have a comic on crowdfunding, if Will and I are still doing it, the invitation is not just there, like literally reach out, let us know. Let us know before you're going to launch so that we can make sure we have you as early in the campaign as possible. And it's been a blast, you guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah.
And everybody who came in the comments, you guys.
Ignacio, Blake, everyone, thanks. Kevin.
Absolutely. Kevin, Charlie. Always. And we could see your name this time, Charlie.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is. Charlie usually comes on as Facebook user.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, and Carla, I'm going to say lady, and Absentia and Besseret, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.